Hi everyone, let's deep dive into the vision of the UiPath test suite. To do that, let's start with digital transformation. Now, roughly speaking, digital transformation is a catch-all phrase. It encapsulates many things. It ranges from increased efficiency, reduced costs, accelerated innovation, enhanced customer interaction, to higher employee productivity and enhanced customer experience. Now, in 2013 already, Forrester put it straight and said that digital transformation is a movement that forces any kind of businesses to create value fast by exploiting digital technologies. So, what's a digital technology? Well, a digital technology is any kind of technology that generates processes and stores information in terms of two states, and that is 0 and 1. Now, that is exactly what software is. So, software is a digital technology. And this implies that digital transformation is a software led transformation. In other words, software fuels digital transformation. Now, since automation is just a kind of a software, one can easily conclude that automation accelerates digital transformation. So, from that simplistic perspective, digital transformation is primarily about automation. And this is just one of many reasons why UiPath coined the term automation first back in 2018, just as Google came up with AI first in 2017, Microsoft with cloud first in 2012, Google again with mobile first in 2010, and Amazon with internet first in the 90s. So now let's see how to accelerate digital transformation through automation. To do that, let's first subdivide an organization into its three main parts. First, we have software development. Now here we find the people who are creating and maintaining software applications. Secondly, we have IT operations. Here we find the people who are managing the infrastructure. And thirdly, we have the business. And here we find the people who are managing the daily business. Now the bottom line is that digitizing an organization in its entirety means digitizing development, IT operations, and the business. Now, one way to digitize development is, for example, to automate checks that help us to continuously evaluate software applications. And one way to digitize IT operations is, for example, to automate the deployments of environments. And one way to digitize the business is obviously through the automation of business processes. So if you manage to digitize development through automation, you get fast delivery of your software applications. And if you manage to digitize operations through automation, well, you get fast deployments of your environments. And if you manage to digitize the business through automation, well, you get fast customer service. And when you are acting fast in all of these three regimes, well, then you become a fast moving organization. So fast plus fast plus fast, that's fast. Now, in contrast, if you fail to automate development, for whatever reasons, then you slow down the delivery of your software applications. And this will also slow down your organization. And the same holds true for IT operations. And without a big surprise, this simple logic also holds true for the business. Now let's zoom into the business side a little bit more and let's focus on the challenges of robotic process automation. Now, the question here is, how do we succeed with automation along the line? Well, automating one, two, or three business processes is not a big challenge. The challenge rather is to scale automation across the enterprise. Now, why is that such a big problem? Well, one reason for this is because your organization most likely looks like this. Typically, it's a mess. It's usually a bunch of people in separated teams and separated departments that aren't really talking to each other. And so these people aren't really moving into one direction, that is, towards strategic company goals. Now, that is, of course, what we need to avoid. We want our organization to look like that. We want that people's actions are aligned towards strategic company goals. So, what's required to get there? Well, according to Simon Sinek, we first need to start with the why. So, first determine your core company values and let the people in the organization know about them. And then do everything you can do to help them to understand these values because this will enable them to know why you're doing what you're doing. And after then, move on to the what, that is to your business goals. Make sure that these goals are sufficiently concrete to be actionable and consistent with your core company values. And then move on to the how, that is, to the practices you need to fulfill your goals. And then think about the who. Think about the people's attitudes and their skills. You need to perform these practices to achieve your goals in order to move straight towards your values. So no matter how it looks at first, it's always a people problem. Now, this also holds true for scaling automation across the enterprise. Now, with that, we just want to point out that there is a cultural perspective related to scaling automation across the enterprise. So we need to eliminate silos. We need to fight against sticky organizational processes. And we need to encourage people. We need to encourage people to motivate them, because motivation and inspiration eventually leads to innovation. And in doing so, we need to manage a lot of expectations of many different stakeholders in your organization. And the reason why we want to do that is to evolve a healthy corporate culture that will help us to scale automation reliably, sustainably, and quickly to truly accelerate digital transformation. Now, here's a quick example that explains quite well why this is such a hard thing to do. Now, imagine you have two people. Now, when you have just two people, you need to manage one single relationship. Now, when you have 5 people, you need to manage 10 relationships. And when you have 10 people, well, you need to manage 45 relationships. So if you want to scale something, for example, automation across the enterprise, you need to manage many relationships between a lot of people in different teams in different departments. And this turns out to be a really hard thing to do. Now then, that's the cultural perspective related to scaling automation. Now, there's also a technical perspective related to that scaling process. Now, here we are mainly talking about automation. So you need to know how to create robust, flexible, and easy to maintain automation. But automation in and of itself is by far not enough. We also need to know how to identify and how to prioritize the business processes that need to be automated. So process discovery, process mining, and process understanding are the keywords here. And on top of that, we also need to constantly monitor the performance and the business impact of our automated business processes to enable us to react and adapt to changes whenever these changes are being made. So now let's focus more on the automation challenge. To do that, let's briefly analyze the value a single business process creates through automation. Now, the value of an automated business process is given by the relation between the savings you create by automating that business process and the total effort it takes to both automate that business process and to maintain it. In case you automate your business processes in a prioritized way, that is, you start automating high value business processes first, then you will get a pattern that looks like this. And this pattern, as you can see, can be subdivided into two parts. On the left-hand side, we find the so-called shorthead. And this regime is mainly, but not exclusively, dominated by so-called IT-governed systems. So here we typically find ERP and CRM systems such as SAP, ServiceNow, and Salesforce, for example. On the right-hand side, we have the so-called long tail. And this regime is mainly, but again, not exclusively, dominated by so-called business-governed applications, such as Outlook, Excel, or Word. And in the shorthead, we usually find the Robotic Operations Center, or the RPA COE. So here we find RPA developers that are focused on automating core business processes. That is, business processes that cut across multiple departments. And in the long tail, we find the organizational workforce. That is, your employees. Now, from that simplistic picture, we can already see what it takes to scale automation across the enterprise. It takes the ability to give every single employee in your company the ability to automate their repetitive tasks. And for that reason, our vision at UiPath is to have one robot for every person. Now, what we have seen and still see in our projects is that most of our customers are somewhere in the middle of the shorthead, still struggling automating their core business processes. So for that reason, let's focus on the shorthead for the next few minutes. Now, when we expand the shorthead again, we see the same pattern as before. We see business processes that are more valuable than others. Now let's discuss the challenges we are facing in automating these business processes. Well, one challenge is process discovery. That is the ability to figure out what business processes to automate. And the solution for this is process mining. And that's the simple reason why UiPath invested so much into its process discovery, process understanding, and process mining capabilities. Now, another challenge is all centered around the handling of unstructured data. Now, why is that the problem? Well, in your daily business, you need to process a lot of different documents in different formats, such as faxes, emails, images, PDFs, or paper scans. And you need to do that for different document types, such as sales orders, invoices, enrollment forms, claims, contracts, and so on and so forth. Now, the reason for doing all that is manifold. You might want to classify these documents. You might want to find, extract, and process information from these documents. Or you might want to understand those documents. For example, you might want to understand the customer complaints in those documents. The problem here is that you need to perform these tasks over and over again. And so you might want to automate these repetitive tasks. Now, we know that this is a big issue, and for that reason, we at UiPath invested so much into what we call intelligent automation. Now, the term intelligent automation is just an umbrella term. It's an umbrella term for a variety of capabilities centered around AI, ML, OCR, and NLP. And the reason why we are so keen to provide these capabilities in our products to you is to help you to not only automate your repetitive handwork, but also at least aspects of your repetitive head work. So now let's twist the vertical axis a little bit to analyze the total savings you would create by automating business processes in a prioritized way. Now, in case you do that, that is, you start automating high-value business processes first, well, then the total savings, for example, in terms of the FTEs you expect for automation, would evolve according to the green curve here. And this is how it looks like in theory. However, in practice, there could be a significant gap between the expected and the actual savings. So based on what we have learned in practice, that is in our projects, the actual savings are very likely to evolve according to the red curve. And this is mainly caused by the maintenance effort that is related to the automation of your business processes. Now, this is not a special issue in RPA, and this is not a special issue of UiPath at all. Well, it's an essential issue of automation in general, because any kind of automation needs maintenance. And since RPA is primarily automation, RPA needs maintenance too. So proactive maintenance is what we need to do. Reactive maintenance is what we need to avoid. We need to avoid that in order to not run into a maintenance chasm at the end of the day. So in summary, we need to pay attention to maintenance right from the beginning, to not allow the expected savings to start to erode due to the constantly growing effort of maintaining automation. Now let's briefly wrap it up and let's see what we have learned so far. First, scaling automation across the enterprise means being able to select and automate high-value business processes first. So process discovery is a key enabler to scale RPA. Secondly, intelligent automation, that is the ability to handle unstructured data in an automated way, is a key enabler for scaling RPA, especially across your organizational workforce. And thirdly, we've also seen a decelerator for scaling RPA, and that is the maintenance effort related to your automation. Now, when we are talking about maintenance issues related to RPA, well, then we are mainly talking about the stability of automated business processes. So high maintenance RPA most often comes from fragile automation. And fragile automation means unstable automation that causes your bots to break in production. And that's one problem that has to be solved. Another problem that has to be solved is the effort it takes to even create that automation. Now we see that it usually takes RPA developers several weeks, up to a few months, to automate a single business process. And this makes automation become a tedious task. So RPA becomes a time-consuming activity. And on top of that, we observe that automation happens across the entire enterprise. It happens in software development, it happens in IT operations, and it happens on the business side by RPA teams. And these teams are often completely separated from each other. So automation itself becomes siloed, and a result of this, the automation skills in an organization become unexploited. Now, this then leads to the fact that automation within an organization is often reinvented again and again. And this leads to redundant automation. Now, that's just another problem that has to be solved to scale automation across the enterprise. So now let's dig into each of these problems one by one to figure out how we can solve them. Let's start with the stability aspect. And let's ask a very simple question. What actually breaks your bots? Well, again, based on what we have learned in our projects, there are three main reasons why bots break in production. The first group of problems that causes bots to break is centered around application changes. And these changes are typically made by software development teams and include technical changes or changes in the business logic of the software applications. Now, we see that unstable automation mainly results from the fact that RPA teams all too often have a hard time incorporating these changes into their RPA in a timely manner, that is, before these changes are deployed to production. The second group of problems that causes bots to break is centered around environment issues. And these issues are typically performance issues resulting from dependencies to third-party services, data-related issues, or issues caused by system updates, for example, made by IT operations. And the third group of problems that causes bots to break is centered around automation issues. And this, for example, includes synchronization issues between the bots and the software applications. Now, we also see bots breaking due to poor object recognition in automation or due to no or even missing recovery handling. Now, these are the three main reasons why bots break in production, from the bird's eye perspective, of course. Now, the problem here is that all these problems sit on top of the business. They sit in the business domain. So these are the problems that usually cause the high maintenance effort related to RPA. Now, the weird thing here is that we observe that high maintenance effort, but at the same time, we also observe a pretty low change frequency of your business processes. Now, business processes don't change every single day. They only change every once in a while, every now and then. So where does this discrepancy between the high maintenance and the low change frequency come from? Well, as already briefly mentioned, this discrepancy comes from the changes that are made to the environments by IT operations and from all the changes that are made to software applications by software development teams. Now, the change frequency of these environments and the change frequency of software applications is much higher than the change frequency of business processes. So what does that mean for us? Well, this simply means that if we aren't able to incorporate these changes made by IT operations into our RPA in a timely manner, well, then we will impose all the noise from these environment changes onto our business processes. And the same holds true for the application changes. So if we aren't able to incorporate the changes made by software development into our RPA in a timely manner, then we will impose all the noise from these application changes onto our automated business processes. So what's the solution for that? Well, the solution is to introduce controlled quality gates between business and IT operations and between IT operations and software development. And we do that to shift these problems to the left. And that is what we call RPA shift left. And this just means that we want to tackle these changes that cause these problems as early as possible. So to solve these problems on the business side, we need to dig at the roots in software development and IT operations instead of just hacking at the leaves on the business side. And this means that we want to give software development teams the ability to continuously check whether the changes they make to their software applications might cause the bots to break in production. And the same holds true for IT operations. We want to give IT operations the ability to continuously check whether the changes they make to their environments might cause the bots to break in production. And that's one capability of the UiPath test suite. And we simply call it RPA testing. So the main takeaway here is that the UiPath test suite is not just a solution that helps software testing teams within software development to test their software applications. No, the UiPath test suite is also a solution that helps RPA teams to continuously test their robotic process automation against application changes and environment changes. So by providing the UiPath test suite and of course a methodology that explains how to put all this into practice, we are convinced that the maintenance effort related to RPA can be reduced dramatically. We are convinced that this will turn RPA from a high maintenance activity into a low maintenance activity. Now with that said, let's now dive a little bit deeper into these three regimes. First, automation happens in all of these regimes. It happens in software development, it happens in IT operations, and it happens on the business side by RPA teams. Now, in software development, we primarily automate test cases that help us to continuously evaluate the quality of the software applications that are being built. In IT operations, we primarily, not exclusively, automate IT processes, such as the on and offboarding of employees or ticket handling, for example. And on the business side, we obviously automate business processes. So automation is an activity that happens literally everywhere in your organization. Now, the problem is that this often leads to redundant automation. And that is automation that is created redundantly in these three regimes. In other words, automation within an organization is often reinvented again and again. And here we are talking about very simple automation, such as reading, writing, or verifying data in databases, extracting information from documents, or verifying data in emulated SAP tables, for example. Now, the reason why this is happening is fairly simple. The automation teams in software development, IT operations, and the business are often completely separated from each other. And these teams usually don't have a basis, a platform to collaborate on automation. So automation becomes siloed and so it becomes redundant. Now this is simply a waste of time and so this has to stop. So our ultimate vision is to enable these teams to share the automation assets with other teams. Our vision is to provide a platform that allows these teams to share automation assets on different levels, such as entire automated business processes, simple task automations, individual activities, or automation of complex controls and screens. Now, such a platform not only enables automation teams to share automation assets, it also enables these teams to exploit automation skills from other teams in other departments. But sharing in and of itself is not enough. We also need to enable these teams to reuse automation assets from other teams with ease of use. So the platform we are referring to is not just a sharing platform. It's a platform to store automation assets. It's a platform that enables these teams to easily pick and choose automation assets created by other teams. So this platform also acts as a central location where reusable automation assets are maintained. So the goal is to enable automation teams across the enterprise to easily reuse centralized automation assets and to reference these assets in their automation. For example, in their test automation or in their robotic process automation. Now this implies that teams that are reusing automation assets from this platform are immediately notified when changes are being made to these assets. Now this in turn then enables these teams to easily update their automation. And in doing so, we are convinced to reduce the maintenance effort of automation and to speed up the time it takes to create automation in the first place. Now that's our vision. So our ultimate goal is to provide that platform, which we simply call the UiPath Enterprise Automation Platform. And the UiPath Test Suite is an integral part of it. So the main mantra here is share, reuse, and update. That is the ability to share, reuse, and update automation assets and automation skills across the enterprise. And this ability is what we call enterprise automation. So enterprise automation will not only help you, our customers, to accelerate automation, it will also help you to digitize your organization through automation, to eventually become a fast-moving organization. Now, since we already provide the number one tool for RPA on the business side, and made the first steps into IT automation, the UiPath Test Suite can be understood as the missing link to achieve enterprise automation. It's the missing link that enables you to share, reuse, and update automation assets and skills across the enterprise. Now, the key here is that you can only do that with one single solution for automation, and that's UiPath. Well, how else would you be able to share and reuse automation assets? Well, you simply couldn't do that. Now, to conclude, through enterprise automation, we accelerate digital transformation. And enterprise automation has to happen at the intersection between business, IT operations, and software development. And this means that enterprise automation is all about collaboration. And since collaboration fosters innovation, the vision behind the UiPath Test Suite is to equip you, our customers, with the missing tool to enable you to create business value fast for your customers by accelerating automation across the enterprise. Now, that is our vision. That's the main aspect of our value proposition.